Good morning, good evening, early morning, late morning, afternoon, night. Um, Hope wherever you are, whatever you're doing, your day is going well. This is Architectural 530 Environmental Systems. This is lecture 4, How We Experience Sound. So we're going to go through, um, look at how we experience it, how we describe it, and what that information we need to get um, from the source to the receiver, how that changes based on the profile of how something sounds. Let me go ahead and remove me. Just want to prove that I'm here. So, how do we experience sound? What is our perception? And then we're going to end with just introducing the decibel. Next one, we'll go over the decibel and some logarithmic scale, how we start adding sources together, how we start getting levels, and from that we can then start to explore and express and predict where we're going. So we're revisiting how we experience sound. We're going to delve into it a little further. So sound waves are collected by the outer ear, funneled through the ear, um, through the canal, and then that hits the eardrum. That eardrum vibrates, and then your middle ear transmit and amplifies those vibrations into the inner ear. So we're going from the outer ear, collecting, funneling those sound waves, that pressure differences, hitting the eardrum, vibrating that, and then that gets into the inner ear. Fluid then, so we're still mechanical at this point. We're still running a mechanical signal through. At that point, we're changing the medium. We've got the fluid of the inner ear, and then that fluid stimulates nerve endings called hair cells in the ear. And those hair cells are generating electric pulses that then go down the auditory nerve, and then your brain interprets what that signal is. So there's research now that can actually map what your brain is doing at these sensations, and it's really changing the way we think about acoustics and how we hear. It used to be based on that we heard syllables, and is now looking as more of a stream. And basically, you can understand and decipher 7 different streams of sounds on there. Once you get above that, once you're multitasking above 7 different things that you're hearing, the brain cannot keep up with what that information is. So you want to keep that in mind for all you gamers and multitaskers out there. So because all of our ears are different, all of our brains are different, all of our structure of our ears are different, we have perception of that. And when we're designing perception or defining perception, it's the ability to see, hear, or become aware of something through the senses. All of our senses are different. So right there, if we go back to the example of 50 people in a space, getting 50 different experiences, that's why we see things differently. Some of us wear contacts or glasses. Some of us aren't as sensitive at some levels and frequencies in the auditory spectrum. Some of us cannot see colors like others can, are less sensitive to touch or heat sensation. So all of these things play into how we experience a space, and we need to take that into account. And then we have a hearing sensitivity range, and then we have the hearing threshold of pain. So now we're starting to get that level. We want to add something objective to the subjective again, right? It's a common theme that we're going over. So in our perception, we're looking at a scale of what we hear, And we hear range of human hearing is 20 to 20. Basically, all published documentation has this 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. I would argue that we really are not processing, we are really not hearing down below 80 hertz. So that 20 to 80 hertz is actually a sensation of what we feel on there rather than what we hear. But we'll go with 20 to 20 on there. And so we've got bats and dolphins all the way down to whales. So we've got high frequencies, so very shorter waves, shorter wavelengths up in the ultrasonic frequencies, and then infrasonic. These are much lower frequencies, longer wavelengths, travel much of a distance. And it makes sense. Smaller animals, a little bit different here with the sonar, but very similar to the dolphin and the bat are the same. But if you think about whales communicating with each other under the ocean, longer wavelengths makes sense. So, yeah, pretty intuitive if you think about it like that. Our hearing sensitivity range provided a link, a DSP guide that delves further into the hearing sensitivity range. But when we're discussing that for humans, remember we've got sound traveling through air and being heard by humans. We're looking at the information at 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. Now we're more sensitive at 1 to 4K. So 1K to 4K. Now think about why that is. Why would we be more sensitive at this range? What does this range sound like? Where would we be at? So think about it a little bit. Think about where we are. Think about what you're listening to right now, what you're watching. Hopefully most of you have gotten it. It's human speech. We're much more in tune to human speech at 1K to 4K. And so an example of this, and we'll go through some of these stepping through when we look at the PowerPoint of frequency wave files that you guys can you have access to. You can download and listen. Or I need to turn it down because this might blow you out at this first one. Is that we detect sounds at 0 dB SPL, and we detect that at 3 kilohertz. But to have the same sensation down at the low frequencies at 100 hertz, we need 40 dB. So we're sensitive at 0. We have the same sensation at 3K, but at 100 hertz, we need 40 dB. You think about it intuitively. When you're doing a car audio sound system, this is why you have 2, 4, 8 subs in a car. You want that low end. You want that hoopty to rattle that license plate and to rattle your neighbors. We enjoy that warm sensation down in the low ends. I describe that as being a warm space. If you look at the example that I posted, this is why Red Rocks is a great outdoor venue. Because usually when you're outdoors and you've got a low end, it just travels away. Right? Think about the whales that communicate at the low end. That frequency at those low ends, that energy just goes and goes and goes. There's nowhere to reflect it. You have to have a big surface to reflect that. And that's why Red Rocks works. That's why Bandimere Speedway is so gosh darn loud, because it kicks back off that mountain on there, so you get double the energy and little absorption. So we want to start thinking about that in rooms. And I'll talk about it more when we're looking at specific types of rooms that we're going to look at, and when to be flat and when to have that low end. But we're hearing from 20 to 20, so 20 hertz, 20 kilohertz. We're sensitive at 1K through 4K. That's voice, human speech. There's a caveat. I use the published data, but when I'm practicing, when I'm designing an actual space, I'm looking at 300 hertz to 3K. And that's because that 4K is a relatively high voice. That's in your soprano range, and we don't experience that a lot. Myself, I'm a lower speaker, so I'm in that 600, 500, 600 hertz. So if you can round out down at 300 hertz, and look at 300 or 3 kilohertz, uh, I think it's a more natural sounding room, from that experience, and we'll see why here in a minute when we do some examples. This is an example of a hearing test plot, and so you can see here our 0 dB for this reference here. This is 0 dB. You can see that this is the normal line, and this test was actually down in here. So this person has lost a lot of sensitivity from 2K all the way to 6K, and then has a little bit better than normal 8K, but it's lost quite a bit at 1K, right? So lost a lot of information in the speech bands here from, going from 300 over here all the way, if you want to go to the higher end, 4K, if you're talking 1 to 4K. So this person here is a lot different than the regular person, which would be the red line up here. Side note, if you want to calibrate your ears, there's programs, and I believe they have this over in the speech department and speech and pathology department. It's Golden Ears, and it trains you, if you're not musically trained, if you don't know music scales and you don't know notes from that, which I did not. I was not a musician when I got into audio. I was not a performer. So that's something that I had to pick up on there. But this is a good way to train and be able to express to others what you're hearing, and normalize what you're hearing to what they're hearing, so you're speaking the same language. The hearing threshold of pain, principles of hearing, can also be explained. This is where we get into the dB, and we'll go into this more. But the hearing threshold is 0 dB, basically 0 dB. Remember at the example, 0 dB for 3K, we have a sensation. We know something's going on. There's information from there, and if you think about it from a development standpoint for humans, that's the point of, hey, there's something in that bush. Is it food, or is it a tiger that's going to jump out and get us? So that's kind of what we're knowing. When something's going on over there, I need to turn my attention, focus one of my streams on that, and determine, is it a threat? Can I just keep going by, or is it food? 20 dB leaves fluttering. 30 dB are whispers. Normal speech, I'm a little bit lower talker. Even with this mic setup and the gain structure like this, I'm still a little bit low. It's also kind of what this setup is, but in general, if I'm not talking to a big group, I talk more like this rather than going up one notch on there or getting closer to the microphone. So this is around 60 dB, in reference to some of the sounds that we're going to hear later on there. Cars and vehicles, that would be 60 to 100 dB. Airplane taking off is 120, and then you get into the pain threshold at 120 to 140 dB. And actually, I have a condition in my right ear that at about 100 dB, I start to lose sensitivity. My ear distorts, and I can't understand what is going on. So that's just a neat little party trick that I have. And just some things to note. We'll go over the logarithmic scale in the next one. 20 dB is 10 times louder than 0 dB, and 40 dB is 10 times 20 dB. And so we're just talking a logarithmic scale on there. It's not, 40 is not 2 times 20 in this case. So keep that in mind when we're adding up sources. Is there a bigger one? No, there's not. So, in this example, you have the files on here, and then we're going to look at where the information is stored and what we need to do when designing a space. So we've got two C's above middle C here. So we're looking at 2K. And then we're going to look at 1K range here. And then we're going to look at speech below 250 hertz. Speech here between 1500 and 2500. And then we're going to look at full range of what that sounds like. So our consonants are on the high end. Our vowels are on the low end, going down. And you can see here in this example, you can search this many times and you'll see this moving, saying that we need to be at 125 to 6K, right? That gives us a full speech pattern. We want to be kind of not right hard cut at the bottom of what we need or at the top of what we need. We want to give some headroom is what we call that. So this first example, we're going to look at 2 C's above middle C, which is 2K. And this is the same level. This is not changing anything, not giving any more level than what I'm talking to now. So you'll see where I'm lower on here because I'm pretty sure this is going to be annoying for you. And so let's listen to what this sounds like. Right, it is that test tone. It's annoying. It's like when TV used to go when they used to shut TV off for all of you non-youngins out there. You used to not watch TV all through the night. At 1 a.m. it would shut off and it would play that annoying tone on there. So we're more sensitive there. Let's play it one more time. Listen to me talking. This is the same level. This is not louder. This is not a louder signal. The level is similar for all of these. Set at the same gain structure. So if you weren't awake, you're awake now. That's for sure. So this is middle C. Let's see what this sounds like. So we've dropped down to 1K from up here at 2K. Right? Much more natural sounding on here. Very much warmer. Easier to hear. So what does that sound like if we have speech down in that lower level? What does that sound like? And I actually said, because I looked at the arrow, it's 1K, and I was thinking about this when I was saying it. Middle C is actually down here at the low end at 250 hertz. So that's a lower end one. Let's go back and relook at that. So we're at 2K for 2 C's above middle C. And then we're at middle C, so we're at 250 hertz. You can tell I'm not a musician on these. Much warmer sound. We like that. So now let's look at speech below 250 hertz. So this is the same level. I'm going to, because that 2K is so piercing, I'm going to play that middle C at 250 hertz. I'm going to turn it up a little bit to get closer to what it sounds like when I'm talking, the same level that I see on the meters on this side. So this is closer to that level is closer to where I'm at. Let's play one more. Set the level. Need to go up a tad more. There we go. So that's equivalent to me talking. I'm a little bit louder than that. But now let's listen to speech below 250 hertz.
Sound. It's not just the air vibrating. Sound means feelings. It refreshes our minds, soothes our hearts. It can make us happy or sad or excited. It also is essential to the communication of ideas and the exchange of information. It's vital to daily life.
So same level, more information. We're below 250 hertz. I'm gonna turn that level down just a tad. So now we've got kind of an idea of what we're gonna hear. Let's see if we can understand what's being said. Do we get the information?
Sound. It's not just the air vibrating. Sound means feelings. It refreshes our minds, soothes our hearts. It can make us happy or sad or excited. It also is essential to the communication of ideas and the exchange of information. It's vital to daily life.
So I'm gonna turn that down a little bit more because we're gonna introduce some more information. It's gonna be a little bit higher level. We're gonna look at 35% intelligibility, but we're gonna look at it at this 2K octave band. So from 1500 to 3K in that range. So let's see what this sounds like. Same signal. We actually turned the level down, so this would be less loud, but I'm pretty sure you're going to think it's louder.
Sound. It's not just the air vibrating. Sound means feelings. It refreshes our minds, soothes our hearts. It can make us happy or sad or excited. It also is essential to the communication of ideas and the exchange of information. It's vital to daily life.
That's the old telephone level, right? Sounds like a tin can, like a can, two cans with a string in between them. It's got no low end. It's got no warmth. So let's listen below 250 hertz.
Sound. It's not just the air vibrating. Sound means feelings. It refreshes our minds, soothes our hearts. It can make us happy or sad or excited. It also is essential to the communication of ideas and the exchange of information. It's vital to daily life.
So that level, that's about as loud as I can get that. That's maximum gain that I can get out of that signal. Depending what you're listening on, and the dynamic range and the sensitivity of your headphones or however you're listening to this lecture, you might hear a little bit of clipping on there. I've got a tad on this side when I hear it played back, but nothing's changed. We haven't changed the level now. And let's look at that 35% one more time.
Sound. It's not just the air vibrating. Sound means feelings. It refreshes our minds, soothes our hearts. It can make us happy or sad or excited. It also is essential to the communication of ideas and the exchange of information. It's vital to daily life.
So this is why it's too loud does not work. We actually have more level for the below 250 hertz than we have at the 35% that we just listened to. But that 35%, we're much more sensitive in those frequencies. And so it's perceived to be louder when it's not. And this plays into these single number descriptors that we're going to use later. Now let's listen to the full range.
Sound. It's not just the air vibrating. Sound means feelings. It refreshes our minds, soothes our hearts. It can make us happy or sad or excited. It also is essential to the communication of ideas and the exchange of information. It's vital to daily life.
That is same level as 250 hertz, just with more information. You have all frequency bands across there. So same level, I assume we would all agree it's louder on there. And that's similar to if we played that 2K tone compared to that 250 hertz tone. Um, so we want to keep note of that and keep that in our back of our mind when we get to some of the curves, when we start looking at profiles of what things sound like. So we all have a different perception. We all see things different, hear things different, and we become aware of what's happening around us. And this is based on our hearing sensitivity range, and it's different for everyone. Right? What our hearing test is different, and thusly, since we hear different, our threshold of pain and our levels are different. This is why we want to come up with objective ways that we can describe how loud something is. So we've got frequency, we've got octave and third octave bands, we've described some amplitudes, we touched on the dB. So we can describe what something sounds like and what its level is. Now we need to discern what is sound loudness, what is sound level. Level and loudness is not the same, as I was dancing around a little bit when we were listening to the examples. Loudness is how the brain perceives the amplitude of an acoustical sensation. This is perception or subjective. This is our experiences. Sound level, normally expressed in decibels, is an objective measurement of the sound amplitude. So loudness is how we experience the amplitude. Level is how we measure the amplitude. And so if we have amplitude that we can measure across frequencies, we can describe what it is, and then we can give some sort of reference to what that loudness and how we are going to perceive that. And that delicate balance, that's usually what's described as the black magic portion of acoustics. But really, it's just science, just straight science. Data models and science. Pretty straightforward. So that ends how we experience sound. This is kind of my favorite part. It all starts to fall together now, hopefully. So we want to think about, when we're designing spaces, how do we experience that space? From a visual aspect, from an auditory aspect, how we feel in there, what our senses are, and we want to align all of those. If you think about a room being cold and sterile, it's usually full of hard surfaces, and it's usually very reverberant and does not have a lot of low end in it. If you think of a warm space like a concert hall, it usually has a lot of low end frequencies in it. It's got wood, it's got warm colors, makes you feel warm. And so all of these tie into what the space is, and what our perception of when we enter that space and how we interact in that space. And then we objectively define how we're experiencing those amplitudes, what they sound like with the decibel. And that's where we'll pick up. We'll look at the decibel next, do some quick logarithmic arithmetic, which is always fun to say too. Pretty straightforward, but then we can start seeing how loud something is. All right, thanks and have a great day.